Blackstar claims that using their Silverline series of amplifiers, you can emulate the tones of your favorite guitarists. Can you really? Let's think about that. Most of us have our gear dialed into our favorite tones, the sounds that we like the most, but sometimes we want a tone that sounds a lot like a particular guitar sound or our favorite guitar player. And Blackstar claims that their Silverline amplifiers can help us get there. Today we're talking specifically about getting metal tones out of the Blackstar Silverline Deluxe 100 combo amp, but these claims of get your favorite tone are made across the Silverline line. Hey everybody, I'm Wayne, your metal professor. Thanks for choosing this video from the millions you could have chosen.
Thank you.
I really hope you like it. If you do, please give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, leave a comment, share it with someone else who might get some good out of it. Okay, on with the content. Now we'll get to how to use this beast in a minute, but first here are 3 samples. Each is the original, followed by my copy of it using the Blackstar. I recorded those straight into my computer because anything that I would get using an external mic would reflect the conditions of this room, which is lots of flat varnished wood and fairly cluttered, so you'd be unable to get the same sound anyway. Now, do those sounds I came up with sound exactly like the originals? Well, no, clearly they don't. But given that I created them using just the Blackstar Silverline and the software that comes with it, I think they're okay approximations. And here is the short version of emulating a particular metal guitar sound. Try to determine what amplifier the original artist used, then what tubes or valves are most common in that model. Choose that tube response from this dial. Now this is the big selling point of the Silverline. A choice of 6 responses, each of which is advertised as providing the sound of a particular type of tube or valve, and there might be a problem selecting the tube or tubes, which we'll get to in a couple minutes. You listen or research to see what, if any, effects are being used, chorus, delay, whatever. Either manually or with the Blackstar Architect software, manipulate the settings starting in this order, although you'll end up doing a lot of tinkering. Voice, of which there are 6 varieties, gain, EQ, ISF, which I think stands for infinite shape feature, although infinite is a bit of hyperbole, and effects. Manually adjust the resonance and the presence. Now it has to be manually because you can't get to the resonance and presence through the software, and you have to keep track of where you're setting them because resonance and presence settings are not stored when you save a sound patch. Adjust the response, voice, gain, EQ, ISF, effects, resonance, presence, and whatever again. Rinse and repeat, and repeat, and repeat again, on and on till it seems ad infinitum, or at least ad nauseum. Backing up to clarify just a bit, the ISF is essentially an additional tonal filter. If it's dialed over to what Blackstar says is the American side, it's a brighter, more cutting sound, whereas if you turn it toward the British side, it's a slightly darker, more full kind of a sound. For example, I could play the riff from Looks That Kill with the ISF all Britished up. I actually like how that sounds, but it sounds off. It doesn't sound like the original. So What let's do is back that ISF back closer to the American side and try it again. Sounds a lot more like the record. Similarly, let's try an Iron Maiden riff with the ISF set where it is now, closer to the American side. Doesn't quite sound right. So let's move that ISF over to the British side and try it again. And that sounds closer to what it should sound like. Now, how faithfully do these responses give you the sound of the tubes they are purported to give? I don't know. I haven't played many tube amplifiers, and the single Marshall head that passed through my paws oh so briefly in the mid-'80s, I don't remember what it was or what it sounded like. I remember I liked it at the time, although I think mostly what I liked was that it said Marshall on it, and that's what all the cool kids were using. So real quick, let's compare the emulated Marshall sound. Specifically, it's supposed to emulate a Marshall JCM 800 from the Blackstar, right, using the EL34 tube response, to the JCM 800 emulation found on the Fender Mustang GTX 100. Now, we'll hear the Fender first, and then we'll hear the Blackstar. And both of these are very dry, no effects, and the EQ all set at about noon. Not much overdrive. Let's give a listen. Those of you who own a JCM 800, does either of those sound anything like a JCM 800 sounds? Let us know in the comments. Not for any particular reason, I'm just curious. Now let's run through how I got the Iron Maiden tone. First, you don't have to use Blackstar's Architect software, but it's a lot easier if you do, because you can adjust things more finely, you can keep track of the sounds that you're getting. You can save each sound. You have more than 100 slots in which to save different sounds. Whereas if you just use the amplifier itself, you've only got 12. 100's more than 12, so you have a lot more opportunity to experiment there. And yeah, the software is just pretty easy to use, and you get a lot more control. To get the software, after you buy your Blackstar amp, you just go to the Blackstar website, you download the Architect software, set it up, obviously. Then you connect your amplifier to your computer using an outdated USB cord. Now, the end that goes into your computer is your standard USB 2.0, but the end that goes into the amplifier is a USB Mini B, I think, if I'm recalling correctly. Why Blackstar didn't just put a standard modern USB port on the amplifier, or even just use Bluetooth, I have no idea, but it is what it is. And as noted, even if you're using the software, you have to adjust the resonance and presence manually and keep track of where you have those set, because you can't get to them through the software, and those settings aren't saved when you save a sound patch. Okay, so let's go through how I got the sound from Number of the Beast. First, I looked for what amplifiers Maiden was using on that album, and big shocker, it was Marshalls. And since EL34s are the most common tubes used in Marshalls, as I understand it, I chose the EL34 response on the Blackstar control panel. Next, I chose the Overdrive 1 voice, but I had to back that down to super crunch after a few efforts, because otherwise it just sounded too fizzy. And I actually kind of liked how it sounded using the Overdrive 1 setting, but super crunch sounds more authentic. I read an article online that asserted Maiden had, at this period in their recording career, they had their guitar amplifier treble turned way up, and not much bass, not much mids. That didn't really turn out to be the case, at least not using the Blackstar Silverline. Now, I do have the treble cranked way up, but both the mids and the bass are at 11 o'clock, so I'm using more mids and more bass than I had thought that I would have to use. Since Maiden are English, I turned the ISF all the way to the British side, As far as effects go, that was kind of tricky. Eventually, I decided I heard some phaser, some delay, and a little bit of reverb on the Number of the Beast riff. So, and here's where the Architect software comes in very handy. I could much more easily choose the type of delay I wanted, the type of reverb I wanted, and I could adjust, the depth of all those things and the phaser, and I could adjust how high in the mix it was. And so, yeah, the software was very helpful there. Then I recorded it, listened back to it, tweaked some stuff, recorded that, listened back to it, tweaked some stuff again, recorded it, listened back to it. Did this more than 40 times before I finally got a sound that I'm fairly happy with. And as I went along, I saved each sound patch in one of the more than 100 slots that you get through the Architect software. As I think I mentioned, you only have 12 slots you can use to save things on the amplifier itself, so the software is pretty handy. Afterward, I cleared out all those slots and just saved the one that I thought sounded good as Number of the Beast, as you might expect. And here's how it sounds. So that's how you do it, or at least that's how I do it. Okay, the big elephant in the room. You can choose a tube response from the Blackstar Silverline, but most big tube amplifiers have more than one sort of tube, and that makes it impossible to exactly simulate the sound you hear on the record. It's also impossible because to exactly get that sound, you would need exactly the same amplifier, exactly the same effects with exactly the same settings. You would need exactly the same guitar. You'd need the same microphone it's being recorded into. You'd need to do it in the same room with the same furnishings, the same kind of stuff on the walls, and so forth. And of course, you'd have to be using exactly the same technique that the original artist used. By the way, that's not me saying that, tone is in the hands, because it's not. But if your phrasing is good, it's going to sound a lot better. Anyway, it's impossible to get exactly the sound you hear on the record, but I think you can get fairly close. Now, sometimes you can't. For example, I really wanted to get the sound you hear on Come and Get It from Judas Priest's Ram It Down album. And I tried to come and get it, but I just couldn't, because I couldn't square what sounds like a mid-boosted tone on the initial slide with a much less mid used in the main riff, and eventually I just gave up. And similarly, well, here's the Mob Rules riff again, followed by my emulation. It's okay. I'm happy enough with it. I would play that in my dining room. I'd even do a gig with that. I think it sounds all right. But it certainly doesn't sound exactly like the record. You can get closer to approximating the sound on the record if you're willing to invest in some pedals, because there is an effects loop on the Blackstar Silverline. I probably should make a video about using that. And I have gotten all the pedals I've gotten them for under $50 from Amazon. And I've gotten a couple of stinkers, but most of them work really well. They sound really well. So they sound really well? Me talk good. Me learn people English. They sound pretty good. Okay, there, now that that's out of the way. Okay, guys, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please subscribe, give it a thumbs up, all that stuff. You're awesome, and I'll talk to you soon.